Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving right into a truly fascinating concept that sits at the very heart of human spirituality across so many different faiths. We're talking about human redemption and reconciliation. Sticking strictly to our source texts, we're going to navigate through different belief systems to really see how they tackle the fundamental human condition. So let's start with the big one. It's the ultimate question almost every worldview tries to answer. How do we actually fix the fundamental human condition? Or, to put it another way, how does humanity bridge that perceived gap between itself and the divine? It's a massive question, and as you'll see, the answers are just as beautifully diverse as humanity itself. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The universal disconnect. 2. Paths of debt and submission. 3. The Christian concept. 4. Orthodox versus Unitarian views. And 5. A new spiritual relationship. All right, section 1. The universal disconnect, acknowledging the gap. So a lot of faiths recognize this profound lack of harmony between the creature, meaning us, and the creator. Man just isn't at one with the divine. So before we look at specific solutions, we kind of need a working definition. Our source text defines atonement as bringing things back into harmony with God. It resolves that opposition. You can actually think of it as at-one-ment, literally making two divided things one again. Section 2. Paths of debt and submission, transacting for harmony. Now, what's really interesting here is how different belief systems offer completely different solutions to this universal problem. Take Hinduism, for instance. It suggests life is a series of reincarnations where a person learns and pays off karmic debt from past, ignorant actions. It's a very transactional path, basically making beneficial decisions to build a positive balance so you can eventually ascend to God. Then we have Islam, which focuses really heavily on pure submission and behavior. By submitting to Allah in pure monotheistic worship, a person becomes eligible for heaven. So both of these paths really focus on an ongoing behavioral journey. But then, looking at the Christian perspective, it relies on something totally different. Instead of an ongoing behavioral ledger, it relies on accepting a single, unique, perfect sacrifice to achieve complete purification and salvation. Moving right along to section 3, the Christian concept, the mechanics of sacrifice. Let's zoom in on this Christian worldview for a second. It frames this huge gap as a literal, legal separation that actually requires a highly specific, almost mechanical solution to fix. To really get this, we have to look at the legal and accounting vocabulary used in our source text. It goes like this. First, humanity was created perfect, but fell under the curse of sin. Second, because God is absolute, divine law and justice demand consequences. And here's where the mechanics really kick in. Step 3, a ransom is paid. This requires a perfect, sinless life to literally balance out the cosmic scales. And finally, because of that ransom, humanity's indebtedness is fully transferred over to a brand new account. Okay, section 4, Orthodox versus Unitarian views, internal theological debates. Now, you might be thinking this is all settled, but even within mainstream Christianity, there's a massive internal debate about how this mechanism of atonement actually works. The Orthodox perspective insists on absolute justice. They argue God can't just exonerate a sinner because that would violate his own divine law, meaning a sacrifice is absolutely demanded to satisfy that law. But on the flip side, the Unitarian or Universalist view approaches it from the exact opposite angle. They argue there's actually no requirement for a sacrifice to satisfy justice at all. They believe God offers unconditional mercy, and he's really just waiting for the sinner to actively seek righteousness. But, and this is a big but, our source text raises a highly specific critique of this Unitarian perspective. By claiming no sacrifice is needed, the text points out that the Unitarian view entirely omits what it calls the curse, these very real historical consequences that humanity suffered for literally 4,000 years before liberation could even be preached. The text basically asks, if God's mercy was totally unconditional all along, why on earth did humanity have to endure millennia of consequences first? It's a heavy question. Finally, section 5, a new spiritual relationship, from friends to heirs. So what's the ultimate theological outcome of all this atoning work? Well, the text describes a total, fundamental transformation of the human-divine relationship. It makes this really fascinating historical distinction. Think about it. Throughout history, there were humans who were deeply faithful long before any unique sacrifice was ever offered. A prime example is Abraham. He achieved this incredible status where the text literally call him Jehovah's friend. But as our source really emphasizes, being a friend, even a great one, is not the same thing as being an adopted spiritual son. And that is the crucial point. This unique transaction elevates humanity's status way, way beyond friendship. As Romans chapter 8 points out, believers actually receive a spirit of adoption as sons. The Holy Spirit acts as the catalyst here. It completely transforms believers from mere friends of the Creator into adopted spiritual heirs, allowing them to cry out, Abba, Father, which is a term of incredibly intense familial intimacy. It's a real game changer. Which brings us right here to the end of our explainer, with a pretty profound final thought. If this entire epic process of atonement and cosmic justice culminates in such a monumental adoption into the divine family, and if this Holy Spirit is the very mechanism that secures this new status, well, isn't seeking out and truly understanding that Holy Spirit our most vital next step? I'll leave you to ponder that one. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.